And we're back with part 2 of our Trails in the Sky community ranking. Thank you to everyone who has decided to stick around, and hopefully this part plus our top 10 will sate your trails first. Last time we looked at the less stellar members of the cast up to number 23, so now we'll be delving into the more solid of the ensemble, either due to their story impact or their character traits. Without further ado, let's start with number 22. Starting off our list, it's the ever-intimidating Gilead Osborne. We're looking at this purely from a Trails in the Sky perspective, so the role that Osborne has in game is quite limited. However, there is one moment where the true menace of the Erebonian Chancellor is laid bare to the player, Star Door 8 in Trails in the Sky III. The Erebonian ambassador during a scene with Oliver and MUELLER makes it clear that Osborne is a ruthless man, in pursuit of solidifying dominance of the Erebonian Empire all over Zemuria, and though the methods are effective, you can't help but feel that they're strongly immoral. Not to mention, he somehow was able to predict an event like the Orbital Shutdown phenomenon, building inefficient steam tanks as a show of power when all other nations had come to a halt. This man is cunning, that's for sure. So it makes it all the more shocking when he finally arrives in Gransale Castle, his arrival unbeknownst to those present, who assumed he was touring Erebonia at the time. As the Prince and the Chancellor have a private conversation together, you start to understand more about Osborne and his methods. The music and setting takes on a more tense tone, and within a matter of minutes you start to realise this man is going to have some significance outside of the Sky Arc. He's willing to use any resource at his disposal to achieve his goals. It piques your curiosity at the right time, provides the player the incentive to see more of Western Zemuria, and thus it doesn't surprise me that, despite his relatively short screen time, the ranking of Gilead is high in relation to his impact on this particular story. At number 21, we have the receptionist of the Zeiss Guild branch, KILIKA ROURAN. The first thing you'll notice about KILIKA is how stern she is. This woman suffers no fools. On top of that, she's extremely deductive, able to discern the general outline of an incident from a mere phone call. It's not just her keen mind which is impressive here either. Being the daughter of Master Ryuga, she was raised as a martial artist, and as such is quite accomplished with her chosen weapon, the chakram. Though her screen time, like Osborne, is minor compared to many other characters on this list, her role and impact in the story of Sky can't be understated, as she's one of the 3 key members representing Zin's slightly lacking story arc and being the past lover of Walter when they were all still at the Taito dojo back in Calvard. However, despite her outward rationality which almost borders on coldness, she is especially caring to the likes of Zin, who she obviously still sees as a close friend. The fact she teases him despite her own nature is always great to watch. I expect to see much more of KILIKA in future arcs, especially if we're led to believe that the next story arc will take place in Calvard, and it's there that I think she will truly shine. For now though, I believe that her ranking here is befitting for what she offers this story. Breaking into the top 20, it's the manipulative and scheming Anguis of Ouroboros, George Weissman. Being an Anguis puts Weissman in the higher echelons of the society's ranks, and with that position comes a great deal of expectation from the player, as this represents the first time we have encountered such a foe. No doubt, Weissman delivers on their expectation. The third Anguis is one of the centerpieces surrounding one of the best cliffhangers in JRPGs, not to mention being the instigator for many events surrounding Lebel in aid of the Gospel Plan that was under his jurisdiction. Saying this, the backstory surrounding Weissman cannot go understated, as his life was destroyed before his eyes due to the mysterious Salt Pail incident that afflicted Haliask in North Ambria, which led to the death of both of his parents. Upon joining the Septian Church, however, he became enamoured with his research and started delving into darker and more twisted arts. It's around this time that his personality also became more calculating and sadistic, as evidenced by the multitude of atrocities he birthed, including the Harmel tragedy. Weissman, by the time we see him in Sky First Chapter, is as despicable a character as you can find in a JRPG series, influencing characters, both minor and major, to commit heinous acts for his own benefit of finding the Oriole. And to be honest, it's clear he was never doing so for the Grand Master. He wanted the Septarian of Space for his own ambitions. So it's ironic when he finally meets his end by the same salt pail that killed his parents, with the realisation that he was doomed to failure by the Grand Master, who saw right through his persona from the start. Feeling a little salty, are we, Georgie boy? At number 19, it's the head of the Gralsritter Knights and First Dominion, Ein Selnitz. Again, this is a character that is very little screen time, so little in fact I'd wager she's right near the bottom in that regard, but I think that lends to the player's intrigue. When I was playing through Sky, I had a feeling that Ein would be a formidable character in the overarching lore of the series, and the evidence points to her potentially being as such. So far, we've seen Ein in increments during Trails in the Sky the Third, where we find out her position within the Gralsritter and her perceived strength. For example, having an individual as strong as Rufina as her personal aide suggests that Ein herself is even more formidable. Secondly, we have some idea about her background via the in-game novel Carnelia, which incidentally is the alias she uses on missions. Like KILIKA, it's not what Ein offers Trails in the Sky, rather it's her position within the church that piques my curiosity, knowing that she will potentially have some significance in a future title. At face value, we can also deduce she's a rather headstrong individual, especially if the Carnelia novel is anything to go by, but she's also forthcoming with those around her. Rather than showing support through compassion like Rufina did, she prefers to draw on the victim's latent strength, and urges them to bring it out for their own benefit. It's a shame we don't see more of her in the Sky arc, but the potential for Ein makes her an intriguing character to get invested in. And here we go, everyone's favourite neighbourhood thief. As early as ROURAN in Trails in the Sky First Chapter, we're introduced indirectly to Blue Blanc, who until this point is known as Phantom Thief B. He steals a treasure from Mayor Dalmor, who thus implores the Bracers to find his asset by following riddle-like clues until the item is finally found. Now I'm gonna say it, I hate these quests. Though they are clever in their execution and it is enjoyable to figure out these riddles by yourself, by the time I get to the third clue I've simply had enough, and I just look up a guide. As if knowing my pain, Blue Blanc comes back for more in second chapter. Why won't you leave me alone? From this, we start to understand more about the Enforcer and the fact that most prominently, he's an egomaniac. He doesn't steal for the mirror, he does so because of his so-called pursuit of beauty, because of the elation and thrill he gets from the event, something that resonates with a certain debaucherous prince. Like the aforementioned, Blue Blanc also speaks in an overly gentlemanly manner, which gives him a certain air of uniqueness that many villains can lack. He's not your typical bloodthirsty beast as we're so often used to seeing. Instead, he prefers to utilise tricks and illusions to best his opponents, all while being seemingly unfazed for the most part. However, it's his quest for beauty that really defines his character, but the deliberate lack of definition of what beauty is makes Blue Blanc that much more interesting. What some would consider a prank, Blue Blanc would see as an inventive way to distract people from their local stresses. The pride and hope of people that shines brightest at a person's most taxing moment is the beauty that Blue Blanc wants to behold, and it's this divide between his concept of beauty versus the general norm that allows him to stand out from the crowd. Like I say, I can't stand Blue Blanc's Find Wally quests, but his character is another story entirely. As delicious as the finest brands, MUELLER is a fine staple to anyone's diet. Oh wait, wrong series. So, MUELLER VANDER. Being a child of the VANDER name, who are designated as the personal guard to the Imperial family, MUELLER is the right-hand pillar who supports Olivert's Raisei Arna. Though the man is more or less constantly at the side of his charge, and is good friends with the prince, his loyalty and pride sometimes give way to frustration as Olivert often likes to tease this tank of a soldier. In all honesty though, their relationship is always heartwarming to see, as it's clear to see that both of them look to protect the other, despite Vander's being obligated to protect members of the Imperial family. Pride and loyalty aside, MUELLER is also a remarkable swordsman, being able to swing around his broadsword with ease and utilising the highest level of the VANDER school of swordsmanship. If anyone has any doubt as to how strong VANDER is, just see what he does to Julia and Joshua in a straight one-on-one fight. And don't lie, you enjoyed playing as him in the first part of Sky the Third as he steamrolled everything around him. MUELLER, if you can't tell by now, is the epitome of the loyal soldier, but he's not allergic to the odd hilarious reaction, especially when around Olivert, so it's no wonder you guys see him as a solid character, and I feel it does him justice that he breaks into the top half. Being Enforcer 0, you would think Campanella would be at rank 0, because, you know, he's 0 and forget it, I was going for something there but it didn't work at all. On the other hand, something that does work well is Campanella's character. Old Campy is the chosen right hand of the Grand Master, and in Labelle he acts purely as observer of the gospel plan. Despite this, he can't help but get involved in some capacity every now and again, a notable example being his ploy to remove Cassius Bright from the picture to ensure the gospel plan's success. On top of being a fabulous game host and the only Sky character to break the fourth wall, Campanella is oddly jovial considering his position. He takes pleasure in his role of serving the Grand Master, and only the Grand Master. His position is not tied to the fate of others within Ouroboros' ranks, as shown by his lack of assistance to certain salty individuals. He's also relatively sadistic, as he often teases certain characters with the small prank of setting them on fire. Overall though, Campanella is a loyal retainer to the Grand Master, and nothing more than that from what we can see. His natural mystery however lends to the intrigue that we feel as players towards him, and thus I'm not surprised that he ranks around this area. Okay, who put Rias in the bottom spot? We have got to talk, my friend. Rias is the assigned squire to Kevin Graham, along with being the younger sister of Rufina Argent, and a childhood friend of the 5th Dominion. Upon the death of her sister, she resolved to become a member of the church and was later trained by Ein Selnitz herself to serve Kevin Graham. Though Rias appears to be a calm and collected individual for the most part, her actions can sometimes resort to violence if she deems it necessary, as shown when a certain enforcer is drawn into Phantasma. She also cares deeply for Kevin, lambasting him for shouldering all his guilt alone. Rias doesn't really have much to offer outside of this though, as her fate is ultimately tied to her dominion, but the fact that she's a badass lass with a chain link sword helps a lot, at least in my book. If you don't know me too well, you'll find out quickly, well, now, that I'm a sucker for the sword wielding gals. Add on to this having an appetite that would make Goku jealous, and you've got a solid if not slightly shallow character in relation to others higher on the list. We've seen our fair share of mysterious individuals on this list so far, but it is my personal belief that no one else trumps Lecter in this regard, not in Sky at least. We first see him chronologically as the aloof student council president of Genis Royal Academy, along with being the senior to a certain purple-haired princess? I'm partially colourblind, okay? Don't judge. Eventually, he disappears without a trace, and is soon found in the company of MUELLER VANDER and Olivert, who quickly deduce that Arundel is more than what his dozy facade lets on, namely being a part of the Empire's intelligence division. All is answered when Lecter accompanies his superior Gilead Osborne into Gransale Castle. On the surface, Lecter lets on a carefree nature, but despite serving the Chancellor, he doesn't want others to get swallowed up by the monster he works under, showing a more compassionate side that he often lets slip around the Crown Princess. Regardless of this though, he rarely will let his guard down. Should he let slip information, it's only because Lecter wants it to be so, and he's adept at keeping his cards close to his chest. Should people try to get up in his grill, he'll simply divert a conversation away with a joke or a witty quip. Everything he does, even the way he wore his Genis uniform, was carefully calculated down to the last fibre. Fitting that a member of the intelligence division is so sharp with his mind. But of course you didn't want to hear all this, you want to see more of that sweet ship sailing over the horizon. You can't deny your true feelings, Claudia. Queen me! From the eerily secretive to the bubble of fluff and joy that is Annalise. She's a recently turned senior bracer come the final chapter of Sky, and from the moment she gets on screen in Sky first chapter, she's throwing lollipops around like we're moving to Lazy Town. Of course, come Sky second chapter, we get to see more of Annalise from a first person perspective, and though she's definitely not the most viable character to play as, her personality more than makes up for her lackluster gameplay. She's very much a dutiful girl, wears her heart on her sleeve, and is a personified ray of sunshine even at the darkest times. I swear, we could be succumbing to the deepest pits of Gehenna, but Annalise could counteract this through her ditziness alone. She also has a habit of eating far too many sweets, ice cream in particular, and ending up worse for wear as a result, something she attempts to learn from but consistently fails at. I know your struggles, Annalise. Despite her nature, however, she has deep ties with the 8 Leaves One Blade school, being the granddaughter of the founder Yun Kafai. Though she was trained by Yun personally, it's clear that she has a long way to go to achieve mastery, but that won't discourage her in any way. She's firmly devoted to the way of the sword, even going so far as to question those who stray from it voluntarily. Her motivation comes from a pure source, the desire to protect, and a desire to stay level with her fated pigtailed rival. Again, like many of the characters tied to Calvard, I expect, no, plead, to see more from Annalise in a future arc. From one practitioner of the 8 Leaves to another. Former Colonel Alan Richard is the first main antagonist we see in the Sky games, being the puppet master of a multitude of events within the first game. For me, Alan is a redemption story done right. He's one of the first villains that I felt true sympathy for. Alan was originally a colonel under the lead of Cassius Bright during the 100 Days War, and personally assisted in the countermeasures that turned the tide on the Erebonian assault. Because of the role of Cassius, he ended up idolising the man as a bastion of Liberlian strength, which made it all the more difficult when his superior chose to leave the army. The tragedy of war that afflicted Alan's homeland made him desire to never see it again, and upon Cassius's departure, he created the Intelligence Division, which would attempt to find methods by which Liberl could see continued peace. This eventually ended in the Grand Cell coup d'etat, where Alan unknowingly released the first of the Liber Arc seals deep below the castle, and subsequently caused the awakening of the Guardian Reverie that was trapped there a millennia prior. With the coup eventually stopped, Alan accepted his crimes, until he was eventually freed in Sky's second chapter. Despite the Queen's pardon, however, he never truly forgave himself for what happened and carried that guilt to the later entries of the Sky arc. Alan Richard as a character represents a pure goal that unfortunately goes down the wrong path, though sole blame can't be laid at Alan's shoes, as in actual fact it was Weissman that instigated his desire further, prompting him to commit the crimes he did. However, who can really blame a man for wanting to protect his country, protecting it from atrocities that he has seen firsthand? I think Alan has a great character arc. Despite his previous crimes and despite punishing himself for events that he considers unforgivable, he still holds the same resolve to protect Liberl in his own way, most notably by establishing the independent RNA research firm in ROURAN. It's a hard position to be in, I'm sure, but Alan sees this through amicably, and based on his stalwart character, it's very difficult to dislike him. Just about falling outside the top 10, we have Sherazad Harvey, also known as the Silver Streak. Shera is a longtime friend of Estelle and of Joshua by extension, becoming acquainted with the former when her circus troupe travelled to ROURAN. Shera has a more tragic backstory compared to many, as she was abandoned at a young age and forced to live in slums throughout much of her early childhood. Thieving and pickpocketing became commonplace for her to survive, and at times she was also the victim of thieves herself, who would see her as an easy target due to her small stature. Eventually, by Adios's will, she was taken in by Mr. Harvey and Luciola to become part of the travelling circus act, where her life eventually took a turn for the better. Upon the disbandment of the troupe, she eventually became a bracer, and is C rank by the time the events of Sky First Chapter occur. She is most notable for her role as mentor to the likes of Estelle, Joshua and Annalise. Shera by nature is akin to a big sister for the Bracer duo, which has grown over several years from being close to the Bright family. She's always willing to give emotional support to the likes of Estelle in her most troubling moments. On top of this, she's a fast thinker and logical in her methods, which we see quite often on missions firsthand. Most notably for many players, however, she's a playful if not slightly sadistic individual who takes passion in her drink, something she regularly flaunts to Olivier, who more often than not ends up on the wrong side of the battle. Her compassion for those close to her is notable, and she's involved in a fair number of humorous scenes. Oh, and please, if we're to get her in a future game, let us have this craft if she happens to be in a 3D title. Whip it, whip it. Woo! And there we go guys, part 2 is complete, and we're about to move on to the pantheon of the Sky characters. Honestly, I expected to see some of these part 2 characters in the top 10 list, but I guess that just lends to how good this series writes their characters that even stronger individuals are right around the corner. Again, thank you for watching guys, and I hope to have the final part out in 2 weeks. Until next time, see you later.